Hello, everybody, and welcome to the PMP Masterclass. Welcome to the PMP Masterclass number 3. I'm Dr. KD Ewulu. I'll be working with you today. Over the next slightly less than an hour, I'll be working with you. So let's just go ahead and begin. I'm going to start by talking about the things we've done before, and of course, what we're going to be doing going forwards. So as I said, my name is Dr. KD Ewulu, and today we're looking at Masterclass number 3. This is going to be broadcast on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. So feel free to join us. And of course, if you're not able to join us, you will be able to watch the replay on any of these 3 platforms. So having said that, today we're going to be looking at a little bit about project human resource management, project communications management, project risk management, and project procurement management. Of course, we're going to be ending with a few next steps on how to go about procuring your PMP certification. And of course, today I have a special treat, your CAPM certification. For those who do not know that, the PMP is an acronym for the Project Management Professional. It is the world's most accomplished, most recognizable project management certification. The CAPM is an acronym for the Certified Associate of Project Management, and it is the entry-level certification that eventually leads you to a CAPM, okay? I'm going to be describing some of those in more detail as we go on. All right, but I want to first of all talk to you about 2 things here. One is an acronym called the ATP, and the other one is an acronym called the ATI. The ATP means the Authorized Training Partner with the Project Management Institute, PMI. The Authorized Training Partner is a company, a corporate entity, like KD Leadership is an Authorized Training Partner. The ATI is an Authorized Training Instructor with the Project Management Institute. The instructors work through the partners, the ATPs, to teach these classes for certification for the Project Management Institute. That's the way it works, okay? So having said that, I am, as a person, I am both an instructor for the PMP certification and an instructor for the CAPM certification with the PMI. And the company, KD Leadership, is a partner with the PMI to ensure that people get their certifications, these 2 certifications globally. So let's look a little bit at the PMP Certification Fast Track Coaching Program. It meets the 7,500 hours PMI qualifying prerequisites for the exam. It meets the 35 contact hours required by the PMI. It provides all the study materials and prep materials directly from PMI. It helps with exam documentation with the PMI. It provides accountability touch points as we go on for the 17 weeks the program goes on. And for those who are enrolling, it saves you about $6,500 in overall costs. It also offers convenient monthly payment plans. We're going to be talking a little bit about that much later, okay? Now, let me jump to the CAPM certification, which I said to you is a lower level, entry-level certification into project management. So what is the CAPM certification? What does it stand for? The CAPM certification, Knowledge, Skills, and Attitudes, is a coaching program that, again, meets the 7,500 hours PMI qualifying prerequisites for the exam. It meets the 23 contact hours required by the PMI. Again, it provides all the study and prep materials directly from the Project Management Institute. It helps with exam documentation with the PMI. It provides accountability touch points, and it saves you $2,000 overall costs. Also offers convenient monthly payment plans. All right, that's it for the CAPM and the PMP. I am going to be sharing a little bit with us right now. Excuse me. I'm going to be sharing a little bit with us right now little bit on that. Let me just share that a little bit with you, and then we can begin. All right. So let's begin with the first part. We're going to have 4 parts today. Let's begin with the first part of this masterclass, which deals with project human resource management. What is project human resource management? The way it works is there are 4 different parts to human resource management under the project management body. The first part is called plan resource management. So you first of all plan your human resources, then you acquire your team, which is your resources, you acquire your project team, then you develop your team, and then you manage your team. Now, of course, there are inputs and tools and techniques for this. I will suggest that we go to the PMP Guide, 5th edition, page 257, or you can just look for figure 9/1, and that provides you with the human resources management overview. Okay, there are 4 processes in this knowledge area, and these 4 processes that I have shared with you in the last slide also have inputs, techniques, and outputs. Your job is to learn and memorize them from a PMP Guide if you intend to take and pass the PMP exam. Now, remember that the PMP exam is the world's most recognized project management certification. It assures you of at least 36% increase in your salary once you get that certification, and it will normally take you about 3 to 5 years to get it done. Okay, so let's get on with it. So let's look at how to what is involved in the plan resource management. All right, the first thing there is the physical resources. What are the physical resources? Equipment, materials, facilities, and infrastructure. And what are the team resources? Human resources, the skill sets of team members, and factors that influence the team. Having said that, let's look at acquire resources, the tools and techniques for acquire resources. Okay, when you're acquiring resources, meaning putting together your project team, you need a few tools and techniques. These include decision-making using certain defined criteria, interpersonal and team skills, pre-assignments, virtual teams. And of course, some examples of some of the outputs of acquire resources include resource and team assignments, resource calendars. Let's jump straight into how to develop your team, because once you plan your team, you got to acquire your team, then you have to develop your team. There are tools and techniques for that as well. And that includes co-location versus virtual teams. Sometimes when people work together in the same physical premises, they're able to learn more from each other. All right? Virtual teams are involved in self-learning. All right? And then, of course, you get to communication technologies. And there are communication technologies, then there are interpersonal and team skills. All right? There are also recognition and rewards. There's training. These are the tools and techniques involved in developing your team. Of course, you throw into that assessments as well. All right. Having said that, we have, as I said, as you can see on your screen, co-location versus virtual teams, communication technologies, interpersonal and team skills, recognition and rewards, training, assessments, and meetings. Okay, it's very important here for us to understand that it's one thing to have your team, it's another to develop them. These are the tools and techniques you need to get your team up to speed. Now, let's look at a few other tools that are important, critical to team development. I'm going to be sharing something called the RACI chart. The RACI chart is an acronym for responsible, accountable, consulting, and informing. Responsible means those who are responsible for performing the work. Accountable, the one who approves the work. Consulting, they have input to the work or decisions, and then inform people to be informed of decisions or results. This is the RACI chart. Remember, I'm not going into detail here. This is a masterclass. I'm just giving you a few of the basic points that are going to show up in a PMP exam. All right? We do have a certification training program that you can enroll in to take you from week 1 to week 17 and get you ready for the exam. But we'll get to that later on today. Having said that, I want to also jump into stages of team development. This is very important. It's called the Bruce Stockman's model of team development. What does that mean? Okay, number 1, there's a forming stage. The forming stage is getting to know each other. What am I doing here? Team building exercises. Then there's a storming stage. Conflict over control. When 2 or 3 people come together, there's always a fight. That is expected because we come from different backgrounds, different levels of education, different experiences, different biases. What your mama told you on the kitchen table, it makes you different. So the storming happens where each person is trying to delineate their own territory, protect their own turf. I'm the boss. No, I'm the estimation expert. I'm this, I'm that. That is supposed to happen. When a team forms and it hasn't happened, just know that your team has not yet metamorphosed to what it's supposed to be. There's forming, there's storming, and inside that storming, you have conflict resolution. No, we've got to do it my way. Somebody else says, no, I want to do it my way. And eventually, mutual respect happens. Where does that happen? Norming, the third stage. Norming is where there's a focus on process and production. This is the only right way to accomplish the task. The focus leads to conflict resolution, leads to recognition. Each person recognizes what the other brings to the table, and there's mutual respect. So far, there's forming, there's storming, there's norming. Only after norming happens do you get into performing, where the team begins to get their job done. That's an optimum productivity, where a team and will watch out for each other, recognition and reward. And finally, once that job is done, the final aspect of the final stage of team development is adjourning. Work is completed and the team officially disbands. All right. I'll dive a little bit into conflict management here, not conflict resolution. Conflict management, there are 2 types anyway. I'll do both of them. All right. First of all, I'll say that the sources of conflict include the following: scarce resources. When resources are scarce, people are going to fight. Scheduling priorities. When you're scheduling time for when things will be done, how they will be done, there's going to be disagreements. That's going to happen as well. And then personal work styles. Some people like to work in the mornings, afternoons, nights. Some people want to work virtually. Some people want to work face-to-face. These are all sources of conflict. And when conflict happens, as it will, in any place you're in, the 2 or 3 people gather together, there's going to be conflict. Okay? What are the resolution techniques we have? There's avoidance, there's accommodation, there's compromise, there's competition, and there's collaboration. These 5 are known globally as a conflict resolution techniques. Avoidance, you pretend it didn't happen, sweep it under the carpet. It doesn't solve anything. Accommodation, you let the other person have their way. Let them win. You lose, you let them win because you want to lose the argument and win the relationship. That's accommodation. Compromise, we both come to somewhere in the middle. We don't all get all we want, but we agree on something that we can all find common ground. That is compromise. And then competition is the opposite of accommodation. You knock the other person dead because you have the power and the authority. You take it all, the person gets nothing. So competition and accommodation are polar opposites of each other. And then you have collaboration. This is the only win-win style of conflict resolution. Why is that so? Both teams actively work together to ensure that they all get all they want. That is conflict resolution technique named collaboration. Now, for more information on different styles of on different styles of interactions and what have you, different theories. The next page I'm going to share with you, I'd like you to just kind of pause the video here and take a screenshot. Okay, I'm sharing with you a link to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I'm sharing with you a link to McGregor's theory X and Y, and I'm sharing to you a link to Herzberg's theory. These are three major theories in economics and in team dynamics that help us to govern and to run and to motivate and inspire our teams to higher productivity levels. Now, I want to say something here. These topics are not covered in the PMBOK guide, okay? They've been in previous exams, and I believe that they will be covered on future exams as well. So take note of them as we go forwards, all right? Okay. Having said that, I want to share a little bit about what we call project management powers. What do we mean by that? The forms of power that a project manager can use to influence and manage a team. Number one, there's reward power. You have money, or you can promote them. That's a reward. That's a power you wield over those that you lead. If they know they can get a reward from you, they're going to do what you say. There's punishment power. That's the opposite of reward. They know that if you don't do what you ask them to do, you're going to get reprimanded. You're going to lose some perks. You're going to lose some money. You're going to lose your position. That is punishment power. You can also utilize that to manage and influence your team. The third one is expert power. Expert power comes from the fact that your team members know that you are very sound at what you do. You're very informed. You're very knowledgeable about your discipline. So they respect you because of that, and they will listen to you and do what you say because you have expert power. Then there's legitimate power. Legitimate power is the power you wield because you're the general manager, or you're the CEO, or you're the vice president, okay? It is based on your position. It's also called your position power. All right? Because you're the managing director, when you walk into a room, people keep silent. They behave themselves. They stop cracking jokes. That's all part of legitimate power. And then you have referent power. Referent power, again, is like the position you occupy. Basically, in referent power, and people revere you. That's where the word comes from. They revere you. There's a cloak of dignity and whatever that it is that you have. And because of that, they're going to listen to you. So these are the 5 project management powers. Let me say that again: reward power, punishment power, expert power, legitimate power, and referent power. All right. I am going to share my screen again. Just give me a moment to pull that up and share my screen again, because I want you to see this particular slide I want to share with you, okay? All right. So on this, right now, we're talking about managing your team. How do you manage your team? There are interpersonal and team skills. And in that, you include conflict management. Remember, we talked about conflict resolution. Resolution is those 5 we talked about: collaboration, competition, avoidance, and on and on. Conflict management is a different ballgame. It's a process where you identify the problem, brainstorm to get solutions, and then, so there's a process there. This other one are just things that you apply to solve problems. There are also decision-making skills. When you are a manager or a project manager or part of a team, you guys have to make decisions together. The way you make those decisions determine your level of skills. There have been different schools of thought. But bottom line here is, in making decisions in the 21st century with a younger generation of workers, you have to include them in decision making. Why? Because people are more likely to be committed and have buy-in to decisions they had a hand in making. Okay? Then there's emotional intelligence, understanding how the other person ticks, what they like to hear. Basically, you channel your interactions with them based on what you know will please them. That's emotional intelligence. You're applying your understanding of their emotions to ensure that they work with you. You're managing your team. And then, of course, there's influencing. Influencing most times is without power. Okay, you are making calls. You are pushing a few buttons to ensure that people have an easy time of things. That is influencing. Most times people influence without authority. And then there's leadership. Leadership basically is support. When you understand that the people you lead have to be supported, your job is to stand beside them, give them the tools that they need to get their jobs done, the encouragement, the motivation, the resources, and what have you, and be there to applaud them when they do a good job or gently correct them when they do not, as they will. All right, let's move on very quickly. I am going to jump into controlling resources now, okay? And I want to say that there are a few tools and techniques for controlling resources. There's data analysis. Basically, you have cost-benefit analysis, trends analysis, performance reviews, and what have you. You also have problem solving, interpersonal and team skills like negotiation and influencing. When you negotiate, there are certain skills you must have in order to negotiate. There's something called BATNA, there's something called ZOPA. This is not the place to discuss them, but these are all concepts that will show up in your exam. And these are concepts we're going to be sharing at the PMP Fast Track Certification Coaching Program. All right? Okay, I'm going to be showing you a slide right now. It's just a slide that gives you an idea of what is called a resource leveling technique. I'm going to be introducing critical paths here, critical tasks here, a network diagram. Okay, so what I show you here is an example of a network diagram. We're starting from the left-hand side, activity A, going all the way to the last activity J, and that is a project. This project starts from the beginning and ends at the end. If you look on this diagram, you're going to see some task boxes. Each of those squares is a task box. If you look, they're going to see some zeros in red. Those zeros in red are slacks of zero. And what that means is that those activities, A, C, F, H, J, do not have any wiggle room. So you must assign those activities to people who are available, not just people who are good at their job, but people who are going to be available, because you don't have room to maneuver. And that's why I kind of put a red arrow there to show you guys that is a critical path. And every task along that critical path is called a critical activity. Now, you're also going to look at and see in those boxes some green numbers. Those green numbers are slacks that are greater than zero. Those numbers you see there, in some cases, for example, activity B has a slack of 2. That means it has a slack of 2 weeks, meaning that you have 2 weeks to play around before you can get that job done. If somebody wants to go on vacation for a week, you can assign that person to activity B, knowing that they can go away for a week, have their vacation, come back, and there's still time to finish the job. All right, so you need to learn how to get these resource leveling techniques, put together a network diagram, identify your critical path, identify your critical slacks by calculating your slacks and float. We're going to be talking a lot about this during the classes coming forwards, all right? Feel free to rewind the video, stop here, take a screenshot, look at it again, and on. That's great. All right, I have a few questions, 1 or 2 questions I'm going to talk about with regards to resource management before we move on, okay? And that's what I'm going to be sharing with us right now. The first question is, as you can see on your screen, a chart that shows positions and relationships in a graphical top-down format is called what? Is it a responsibility assignment matrix? Is it a staffing control chart? Is it a text-oriented chart? Or is it a hierarchical chart? The answer there is option D. Okay, a hierarchical chart shows positions in a graphical top-down format. Okay, examples of hierarchical charts include work breakdown structures, organizational breakdown structures, and resource breakdown structures. Well done. I have one other question to ask us, and then we'll move on to the B part of this broadcast. A project is beginning to work together and are adjusting habits and behaviors to support the team. What stage of team development is it experiencing? Is it performing? Is it storming? Is it forming? Is it norming? You look at that question again. A project team is beginning to work together and they're adjusting their habits and behaviors to support the team. The stage there, the correct answer is D. The team is norming. When a team norms, okay, what happens? They are beginning to work together and they're adjusting their preferences, okay, and their behaviors to support the ideals or the goals of the team in general. All right. Let's jump into project communications management very, very quickly, okay? This is a 1-hour broadcast. We're moving a bit slowly, but I'm going to pick it up a little bit, okay? I don't want to keep you guys longer than you should. So we're looking at project communications management. And this is a time for me to share some PMP qualifying information for you before we go ahead, all right? Because you're here to get an insight into how to get your PMP certification this year, all right? That's the point. I'm trying to make sure that over the next 20 weeks, you're ready for your PMP exam. All right, now remember, this is something you can do in 5 years, 3 to 5 years. Traditionally, it takes 3 to 5 years to amass your verified project management experience. However, KDEL team has patented a 17-week, 4-month path. Again, traditionally, it requires showing evidence of 4,500 to 7,500 hours of signed-off project management activity to be approved to take the PMP exam. Again, KDEL has perfected a 112-day, once-per-week Zoom-delivered alternative that requires only 1.5 hours of instruction per week. Wonderful. Now, I said I was going to throw in something for you being here today watching this video. I'm going to throw in the CAPM qualifying information. The CAPM, as I said, is a Certified Associate of Project Management. I'm going to throw that in as well. It wasn't supposed to be a part of this broadcast, but I do believe that there are people out there who do not have the prerequisite knowledge or experience to take the PMP exam and might be requiring an entry-level certification to get their teeth into project management. This is a course for you. Now, traditionally, it takes about 3 years to amass your verified project management experience for entry levels with high school, 2-year or 4-year diplomas, okay? It will take you about 3 years to put together that experience before you can even apply for the exam. KD Leadership has patented a 10-week, 2.5-month path to make it happen for you. Traditionally, again, it requires showing evidence of 7,500 hours of signed-off project management activity to be approved to take the CAPM exam. KD Leadership has perfected a 75-day, once-per-week Zoom-delivered alternative that requires only between 1.5 to 2.5 hours of instruction per week. That is virtual, that is online after work. All right, let's move on. You can feel free to just stop this video here a little bit and take some of that information and do something with it. Let's jump into the communications management processes. What do they entail? There are 3 sectors there: plan communications management, manage communications, monitor communications. And basically, you want to develop a strategy, a communication strategy for effectively managing your stakeholders. And then you have to carry out those activities as well. All right? Okay, let me stop sharing here a little bit just to look you in the eye and give you some more information, okay? Again, there are inputs, tools, and techniques and outputs for any of the knowledge areas of which communications management is one. So in communications management, there are inputs to that, there are tools and techniques, and there are outputs. Again, I'll ask you to go to your PMBOK Guide 5th edition or 7th edition. You want to go to figure 10.1. It's called the Communications Management Overview to look at that. There are 3 processes within this knowledge area as well, and each of those 3 processes have inputs, techniques, and outputs as well. Please learn and memorize them from your PMBOK Guide if you are going to successfully take and pass the PMP exam. Again, we're going to be helping you with that when you sign up for the course. All right, so let's move on. Let's look at managing communications. Remember, we talked about managed communications. Let's look at the inputs and outputs of managing communications. Again, I'm going to be sharing my screen with you to get that done, all right? So, in managing communications, the inputs, tools, and techniques include, they are similar to the planning process, plus the following. You have performance reports, okay? You have management information systems, you have reporting tools. The outputs include communication documents, plan updates, asset updates, Always remember that when you're dealing with people, you have to give them information. You have to give them data. You have to give them something they can remember. And so the trick here is, because we have different types of stakeholders, what do you tell to whom? What level of detail are you going to tell the person? What is the frequency of your communications to each and every one of these different people? That is what is entailed in the RSI, in the RAM, and in the communications management plan. All right, let's get to monitoring your communications. Again, there are tools and techniques. They're similar to the planning and management processes. There are outputs again, work performance information, change requests, plan and document updates. All right, okay. So what are a few of our communication highlights going forwards? What are our communications highlights going forwards? Stakeholder communications tools vary based on the size of the project and the complexity of the project. There's a mix of people-based and technology-based approaches. Communications are shaped by the project, the organization, the enterprise, and cultural factors. Of course, you're seeing enterprise organizational factors here. That's all part of inputs. Remember what we said in the first broadcast, okay? If they're asking you about inputs into the knowledge areas, once you see enterprise organizational factors or organizational process assets, they all belong to inputs. Just know that. That's just a cheat sheet, okay? Bear that in mind going forwards. All right. Again, let me start sharing again, because now I want you to see visually what communications is about. All right, I want to see visually what communications is about. Communications is a two-way process of transferring information from one entity to another. You start from the project, you go to the external stakeholders. The external stakeholders hear it, and then they respond back to you, again, to the project. So a project manager, remember, will spend approximately 90% of his or her time communicating. Wow. So when you hear that somebody's a manager, it's not as if they roll their sleeves and get in the trenches. Oh, there's a time for that. But most times, what do managers do? Managers are communicating. They're keeping everybody in the loop. I'm talking about loops. I'm sharing a loop with you here. How many directions of communications exist based on the number of people involved? There's a formula here called the number of interactions is the number n meaning the number of people involved, okay, multiplied by the number n minus 1. So if there's 6 people involved, it is 6 multiplied by n minus 1, 6 minus 1, that is 5. That is 30 divided by 2. So as you can see on the screen right now, the formula is n into n minus 1, all divided by 2. So let's go ahead and trace that. As you can see, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people here. And these are the ways they communicate. We're looking at 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10. And then you have 11 across the bridge, 12 across the bridge, 13, 14, and 15 across the bridge. So as you can see, there are 6 people here. There are 30 different ways, 15 different ways they can communicate. How is that? 6 times 5, which is 30, divided by 2, which is 15. If you have 6 people, there's got to be 15 different directions of interactions. Otherwise, you're missing it. Okay? And that's the example I just gave you behind. So if n is equal to 6, the number of interactions will be 6 times 6 minus 1, which is 6 times 5, divided by 2, which is 30 by 2, which is 15 interactions. I hope that is clear. This is definitely a PMP exam question expected if you're going to take the exam. Okay, I'm giving you a freebie here. All right, so let's get into a communication model. In a communication model, the sender encodes a message to the receiver. The receiver decodes the message. The receiver decodes it, understands, and when the receiver wants to respond to the sender, he or she also encodes their message, and the sender decodes that message when they receive it. Messages are sent, and as they are sent, there is what is called noise. Noise are external stimuli that confuse or diffuse the meaning of the message. All right? It is very important to understand that no matter what information you're transferring to somebody, there's a level of noise. Sometimes that noise could be less, sometimes the noise could be a lot. So what is encoding? Encoding means you translate your thoughts and ideas into a language that is understood by others. Decode is to translate the message back into meaningful thoughts or ideas. The person who receives the message is decoding. The message feedback, okay, is the output of the decoding, the message that you actually received. The medium is the communication method or platform used to convey the message. Today, I am getting to you through Zoom, but I'm broadcasting through you on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and on YouTube. These are the platforms we're using today. All right? And what is noise? Noise is anything that interferes with the transmission and understanding of a message. Examples of noise include distance and unfamiliar technology. All right? Take a screenshot here if you want to. You can slow the video down, pause it a little bit to really understand this going forwards. Okay, I have a few communication management extras before we look at a few. We're going to be looking at a few questions as well, as always. So beware of over-meeting, what we call over-meeting. Beware of having too many meetings. Okay, consider stand-up meeting. We call them Scrum stand-ups type of meeting. Okay, informal stand-ups, 2 or 3 minutes, discuss what's happening, move on to the next. Don't stay too long in a meeting. Always have an agenda. It's important. The agenda helps you to be focused. Your meeting should not last more than 30 minutes. Anything more than 30 minutes is superfluous. Always have an agenda. Start on time, finish on time, or finish early. Schedule very short meetings. Publish and share the minutes of your meeting to all attendees or to all stakeholders. Ensure that you set ground rules and enforce them. Okay? There are rules and regulations about meetings. Say what those are before the meeting starts. Don't interrupt others. You get 2 minutes to speak. You get 30 seconds to rebut. No, rules like that work. Have different meetings for different things. Example, you can have a team meeting, you can have a scrum meeting, you can have a risk meeting. Okay, don't try to scrounge everything all into one meeting. You're going to have a hard time. Focus strictly on one thing at a time to be effective. All right, let's look at 1 or 2 questions and answer before we move to the next segment, okay? I've got to pick it up, as I said. There are many communications methods. Which one is designed for recipients to access information at their own discretion? At their own discretion. Is it pull communications? Is it push communications? Is it sender-recipient communications? Or is it interactive communications? The answer to that is A, pull communications. This approach is often used to fill the needs of large audiences or to communicate large, complex information sets. It allows people to pull whatever information they require from the database. All right, second question we're sharing here is, interpersonal skills and management skills are tools to manage stakeholder engagement, control communications, manage communications, or plan communications. Let me ask that again. Interpersonal skills and management skills, what are they? And out of those 4, the answer is A. To manage stakeholders, project managers need both interpersonal and management skills. Remember that a stakeholder is anybody and everybody that is affected positively and negatively by your project is a stakeholder. Most stakeholders are negative in nature. You don't know them. They're hiding. They don't like what you're doing. They can't tell you they don't like it. And so they're behind the scenes needling you. They're negative stakeholders. Your job is to find who they are, engage them, have a conversation with them, and get them to tell you exactly why they do not like what's going on. So you can see whether you can come to a mutually agreeable solution. Okay, well done. We've done halfway in here right now, guys. We're going to project risk management. I love risk. You know why? Everything in life is a risk. There's nothing you go through in life that is not risky. So you got to plan for risk. What if? That's the question. What if? Have you asked yourself, what if? What if? What if? What if? So you got to have a plan for your risk. You got to identify your risks. You got to perform what is called a qualitative analysis. Qualitative risk analysis, quality. And then there's a quantitative risk analysis. Qualitative means words. Quantitative means numbers, data. Then you have to plan for your risk responses. If this happens, what do I do? If that happens, what do I do? And on and on. And then, of course, the risk plan has to be implemented. You have an implement risk response, and then risks have to be monitored. If you know something can happen, you got to monitor it to know when it's going to happen, and you have a response for it. You can't just sit there and you're hoping and praying, okay? Miracles are defined as the supernatural happening, a suspension of the natural. That's what a miracle is, okay? You can't expect miracles all the time. You got to have a plan for the things that happen. And then the things you can't change, that's when we begin to pray. All right, guys, let's move on. Now, that's outside the realm of this class, okay? I just kind of threw that in. So, how do we define risk? Risk is an uncertain event or condition that, if it occurs, has a positive or negative effect on a project's objectives. Now, there are positive risks and there are negative events. Positive events, negative events. A positive event is that you select the lowest bidder on a project because of budget constraints. But the bidder exponentially exceeds your expectations on the project, meaning they even save you more money. You selected the lowest bidder and he saved you even more money. He came in much lower than what he quoted. That is a positive event in a risky situation. A negative event is a thunderstorm damages your transformers that prevent your project from being completed on time. That's a threat. So the first one I discussed, a positive risk event is called an opportunity, and a negative event is called a threat. Bear that in mind. Let's move on. So, positive events or conditions are also called opportunities or good risks. All right? A risk that can have a positive or negative effect is called a business risk. A risk that only has a negative consequence is called a pure risk. So a business risk has a positive or negative effect. A pure risk has only a negative effect. You see how that works? So when you hear people in management talk about business and pure risks, that's what they mean. Again, this is an exam topic. Make sure that you understand that. What is risk tolerance? The degree of risk you are willing to accept. Remember, everybody has a different risk tolerance level. Your risk tolerance level is what is called your risk threshold. This helps you identify the level of risk beyond which specific responses are needed. There's a level you get to say, enough, I've had enough. And for different people, they've had enough at different stages. Some people have enough when you slap them once, others have enough when you slap them 5 times. That's their risk tolerance. Okay, always remember we're all different. And because of that, when you're managing risk based on the people who are going to be interacting with your project. For example, a company may have a policy that any risk that increases the project duration by 5% or less is okay, but anything above that is unacceptable. That is their risk threshold, 5% or less. You see how that works? And that's a policy statement. Once you get to 5% is more than that, no, we can't go with this. I'm sorry, our company doesn't do that. So remember that as we go on. Again, this is an exam question going forwards. So in project risk management, again, there are tools, techniques, inputs, and outputs. All right? Again, go to your PMP guide. This time you're going to figure 11.1. Figure 11.1 is called the risk management overview to see the inputs, the tools and techniques, and the outputs of project risk management. Again, each process within this area also has inputs, techniques, and outputs. Please, please learn and memorize them for the 6 or 7 risk processes from your PMP guide. All right? Okay. So let's get into risk identification, the tools and techniques there. There are analysis approaches. What are those analysis approaches? The first one there we're going to talk about is called the root cause analysis. You've heard about the fishbone or Ishikawa diagram. The fishbone diagram, just like a fishbone, you know, when you finish eating fish and you leave the skeleton there, that fishbone, is called the root cause analysis. Basically, you start with the end in mind and work backwards. If you find the root cause of your problem and you attack that problem at its root cause, the problem disappears. But if you're always trying to fix the problem without attending to the root cause, the problem will always reappear. That is the root cause analysis. Then there's the assumptions and constraint analysis. You're assessing assumptions and constraints. People are going to tell you, what if this happens? What if that happens? Sometimes you have meetings where people play, it's called devil's advocate. Devil's advocate means you are basically imagining all sorts of things that can go wrong and throw it in there. And your risk planning team must find solutions to those things if they happen. That is your assumptions and constraint analysis. And then you have your SWOT analysis. Everybody knows that. that analyzes the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Everybody knows about the SWOT analysis, okay? And then you also have your document analysis. That's where you have a systematic review and interpretation of your documents. All right, let's move on because this is not a class. Remember, this is a masterclass, just to give you a few tidbits in there. Remember, as you can see on the back of my screen here, feel free at any time to register for the class that is coming up. You can see all the QR codes behind me there, the link at the very top of my head. Go ahead, stop the video, take your screenshots there, and let's move on. All right? So let's look at qualitative and quantitative risk analysis. Qualitative is descriptions. As I said, once you hear quality, it's words. Once you hear quantity, it's numbers. That's how I remember it. So qualitative is data quality assessments, risk probability and impact assessments, and assessments of other risk parameters. These are qualitative in nature, a lot of grammar. On the other side, quantitative is numbers, simulations, analysis, decision tree analysis, influence diagrams. These are numbers, okay? Both of them go hand in hand. Qualitative is not very, very accurate. It gives you a general impression. Quantitative dives down deep and gives you the numbers to 0.05%, whatever the case may be. And that brings us to probability and impact. It's very important when you are thinking of things that can go wrong. These are the two things that you focus on. What is the probability that this is going to happen? What impact is it going to have if it happens? Probability, the likelihood that an event will happen. It can be expressed in increments of 1. It is determined through expert judgment, and it is qualitative in nature. That's your probability. You are saying, we have a 50% chance that this will happen. There's a 30% chance it will rain. That's probability. However, the impact is the amount of pain or gain an event poses to the project. Now you're looking at what you're going to suffer if this happens, or what you're going to gain if this happens. That's the impact. It can be expressed again in increments of 1. It is quantitative in nature, numbers, data, and percentages. And that brings us to categorizing risk. Because you see, it's one thing to say, I have a risk. What is the category of risk? Your risk can be in 4 different categories. All right? And we're looking at impact and probability. Okay? So let's start with quadrant number 4. When you have a low probability of it happening and a low impact, what do? All right, let me switch around. Let me start from quadrant number 1. When you have a high probability of it happening and a high impact if it happens. This is a sure banker. It's going to happen. And when it happens, it's going to be devastating. So what is your plan for that? Your plan is what is called a strategic focus. Strategy, when you say strategy, is the future. You've got to focus on it. You've got to put things in place. You know it's going to happen, and you know that when it happens, it's like having a hurricane, and they say it's coming through Atlanta, it's coming through Charlotte, or it's coming through New York. All right? You've got to have a strategic focus on that because it's happening, and it's going to be devastating. That's when you have people getting out of town, packing up, boarding up their buildings, okay, these are strategic focus. It's going to happen. The second set of risks are risks that are probably not going to happen. They're low in probability, but high on impact. It's probably not going to happen. Let's pray it doesn't happen. But if it happens, it's going to be a major impact. That is where you have a contingency planning. You put money aside for it. You're praying it doesn't happen. There's a likelihood it will not happen, but you also put money aside for it in case it happens. It's called contingency planning. The third group is a low impact if it happens, but a high probability is going to happen. You know it's going to happen, but if it happens, it's going to be a low impact. You don't do anything. You have what is called operational planning. You plan to handle it when it happens, but you know that the impact on your project is not going to be too much, so you plan to handle it when it happens. And the final one is low impact, low probability. It might not happen. It doesn't seem like it's going to happen. And even if it does, it's low probability. What you just monitor it only. So you can see the 4 different responses here we've just looked at when you categorize risk. There's monitor only, operational planning, contingency planning, and strategic focus. All right. So risk reserves. What do we mean by that? There's something called management reserves. they're not part of the cost baseline, and they're meant to be expended in crisis situations by the executive or leadership, not by the project manager. So if you're a project manager here, you don't have the authority to expend management reserves. Most times you don't even know it exists because it's the leadership that puts that funding together. All right? But the one you have the power to expend is called contingency reserves. These are for known unknowns, things you anticipate could occur, and they are meant to be expended in emergencies by the project manager, you and I. In essence, the project manager spends the money in the contingency reserves, and the management spends the money in management reserves. All right, look at that this way. Management reserves are for unknown unknowns. Unknown unknowns, what are those? Acts of God or force majeure. Stuff you don't anticipate, okay? A hurricane comes and knocks down your power, and for 3 weeks you don't have power. What are the chances that a hurricane will come and knock off your power? 1 in 1,000. It might take 10 years. You live in a place for 10 years, a hurricane never comes. So you don't spend that money. But when it happens, it's an act of God. And that means management has to step in to do something, bring money from outside of the project to fix that problem, because that problem might not happen again for another 20 years or 30 or 40. It's a force majeure. All right, let's get to plan risk responses. Okay, and then we'll be closing out this. We have a couple more minutes before we can close out. Okay, plan risk responses. What are those? They are strategies and opportunities. Okay, there are strategies called C, strategies for opportunities, and there are strategies for managing threats. They're called TAM, T-A-M. So C is when you share. If you see a risk that is coming that could be an opportunity, we could gain from it, you share it, you enhance it, you exploit it, right? If you see something that hasn't happened before, that could happen, that could make you make more money, you're going to say, yes, please come, right? That's the C, share, enhance, and exploit. On the other hand, if you see something that could cause you to lose money, okay, you use the strategy called TAM, transfer, avoid, or mitigate. Transfer, avoid, or mitigate means that we don't want this, so we'll transfer it. An example of risk transference is insurance. You're paying insurance every month for your car, for your home, for different things. You're praying it never happens, and when it doesn't happen, the insurance company swallows the money. You never get it back. But you rather pay that for your peace of mind. That is risk transference. Risk mitigation means you cannot remove the risk completely. So you lower it as much as you can. You mitigate, you manage it. And then risk avoidance is, I don't want to go there at all. Leave me out of it. I'm out. Those are strategies for managing threats. Okay, now there are two other strategies that exist for both: escalate and accept. You can escalate something whether it's an opportunity or a threat. You can accept it whether it's an opportunity or a threat. All right? Okay. Few key concepts, guys. A few key concepts. Let me just share that very, very quickly. All projects are risky, okay? We choose to take risks to create value. We achieve this by balancing the risk and the reward. You ask yourself, what do I stand to gain here? If it's a lot, I can take the risk, okay? I can pay this amount of money because it can expose me and I might get a lot of stuff, so you pay the money. It's a risk you're taking. You're balancing your risk and your reward. All right? Risk management identifies and manages risks that are not covered by other processes. The unforeseen, a risk is an unforeseen, okay? There are two levels of project risk. There's individual risk, there's overall risk. How it affects me and how it affects our community or our company or our country, whatever the case may be. Risk can have both positive and negative effects. We talked about that, right? Risks emerge throughout the lifetime of a project. You never know when it's going to rear up its ugly head, okay? And then teams need to know the acceptable level of risk exposure. We talked about that, okay? You want to say, this is my risk threshold. Anything more than 5%, we're not doing it. Or anything more than 20%, we're not doing it. In my family, I am risk prone. My significant other, my spouse, is risk averse. Together, we make a great team. When I get reckless and I want to jump into something, she'll say, hey, no, come back here. All right. And so somehow we end up being in the middle. That's the way it works. Okay, so every family, every organization must say, what is our level of risk exposure? To which level are we willing not to go beyond? And that's it. And that's okay for you, for your family, for your team. We all have different levels of risk acceptance. Okay? All right. I am going to share again our question and answer session for risk very, very quickly. We are coming to the end of the broadcast, my friends. All right. So, which two strategies apply to managing both threats and opportunities? I mentioned that. Is it share and mitigate, escalate and accept, enhance and transfer, or there are no common strategies? Again, the answer is B. Okay, the answer is B. Risks that present opportunities and threats can both be escalated and accepted. Okay, you can escalate them, you can accept them. Second risk question is, risk is defined as an event that will impact the project negatively. This statement is it always true, always false, sometimes true, or not true? Let me ask the question again. Risk is defined as an event that will impact the project negatively. The answer there is C. It is sometimes true. Risk is not always a negative event. Sometimes risk can offer opportunities. Okay? All right. Now I'm going to share some more PMP fast-track communication information. Okay? Your study materials when you register for the program will come directly from PMI once you grab your spot. There are 3 payment options. Option number 1 is a one-time payment of $2,500 payable before the start of the program, in this case by July the 1st, 2025. You can see the payment link there. Option number 2 is a 2 installment payment plan of $1,250 each, payable at the start of the 1st and 3rd months of the program. In this case, on the 1st of July and on the 1st of September of this year. You can see the payment button there. And option number 3 is a 5 installment payment plan that includes a $500 deposit to grab your spot on the program. You can see the link there. And 4 payments of $525 each spread over the 4-month duration of the program. That means you can get into the program, pay your $500, pay $525, and every month you pay $525 until the end. So in this case, you can see the link there on the 1st of July, 1st of August, 1st of September, and 1st of October of this year. You can pay only $525 and be ready for your PMP exam. Remember, we're going to be insisting that you take that exam immediately we finish in October. We're finishing on the 5th of November. You should take that exam before the end of the year. We insist if you're going to join our program. Okay. So I will say something here. Please stay till the end. I've got a link to a special offer of $2,000 for the masterclass attendees. So if you're in this masterclass, instead of paying $2,500, I've got a link, special link at the end of this broadcast, which is in about 10 minutes, to make sure that you get that 20% discount. So you don't want to miss that going forwards. All right. And then, again, I did promise you I was going to add some CAPM certification information, okay? Again, your study materials will come directly from the PMI once you grab your spot. And this is for the CAPM, the entry-level program. There are 3 payment options, and this is a much cheaper program. Option number 1 is a one-time payment of $1,000, payable before the start of the program, in this case by August the 3rd. The program starts on August the 4th of this year. And that's the link there. Option number 2 is a 2 installment payment plan of $500, payable at the start of the 1st and 2nd months of the program. This is just a 10-week program. So you've got to pay at the 1st of the month and the 1st of the 2nd month, and that's it. So in this case, you're going to pay the first one by the 3rd of August and the next one by the 3rd of September of this year, and that's the link. And the most sought after is option number 3. It's a 4 installment payment plan of $250 each. It's payable twice a month, on or before the 3rd of August, on or before the 17th of August, on or before the 3rd of September, and on or before the 17th of September, 2025. That is the link there. Again, stay until the end. There's a link to the PMP certification special offer of $2,000 for masterclass attendees. Unfortunately, we do not have an early bird special for the CAPM. The CAPM is only $1,000. We don't have an early bird special. All you can do here is to grab the $250 every 2 weeks. It makes it easy for you. to garner that going forwards. All right, my final presentation now is project procurement management. All right, there are 4 processes here. Okay, those processes include plan procurement management, conduct procurements, control procurements, close procurements. What are procurements? Buying and selling. Decisions on make or buy. Do we buy this from outside or do we make it in-house? That's really what procurement is about. The bidding process, what have you, how many weeks, the kind of people that are going to be bidding and all that stuff. That's what we're going to be discussing here going forwards. And again, there are inputs, there are tools and techniques, excuse me. Again, there are inputs, there are tools and techniques, and there are outputs. And of course, there are several of those 4 processes in this knowledge area. They also have inputs, techniques, and outputs. Again, please, I ask you to please learn and memorize them from your PMBOK guide. What are the factors impacting procurements? What factors impact procurements? Number 1, the size of a project, the size of a procurement, and the complexity of a project. Number 2, physical locations of buyers and sellers determine how the procurements will go. Governance, regulatory environment. There are certain things you can buy in the open market, okay, because they're government regulations. Then there's the availability of the contractor who is going to sell you the stuff. Are they available? How far away are they? Okay, how long does it take to get things done? And then, of course, you have agile environments. There's collaboration and shared risk. Agile environments means, again, focus more on technology projects, okay? You have to collaborate with people. You have to share the risk, okay, especially in procurements. Let's get to it. I want to start with contracts. What is a contract? A contract is a mutually binding agreement that obligates the seller to provide the specified products, services, or results, and obligates the buyer to provide the monetary or other valuable consideration in return. There are 5 components of a contract: the offer, the acceptance, the consideration, the legal implications, and the capacity, sanity. Sanity is important here. Sometimes a judge can cancel the contract because they feel that the person who entered in that contract was not in a sane state of mind, was insane when they made that deal. They were not in the proper frame of mind. And all the judge has to see is an indication that that person was being coerced, was being forced, was not in their right mind, and they cancel the contract. So make sure that you understand these 5 components of a contract. These are going to be in the exam, definitely, okay? For more information on contracts, go to that link at the bottom of the page right there. You can click on that and look at it and just learn a little bit about contracts going forwards. All right. So in essence, what are we talking about here? Make or buy analysis. Okay? There's a return on investment that tells you whether I should make this or buy it. If you're going to make more by buying, you buy. If you're going to make more by producing it in-house, you do that. There's an internal rate of return. Of course, the returns I'm going to make. Your discounted cash flow, how much money do I have? If I don't have money and I'm expecting money in 2 weeks, I would rather get a vendor to supply to me without paying, and then I pay them in 2 weeks. You see how that works? So again, that is what determines whether you're going to make or buy. Your net present value and your benefit or cost analysis. These are things that determine whether you're going to buy something or you're going to make it in-house. All right, let's move on. So what types of contracts exist? Again, I'm going to share my screen with you guys very, very quickly. What kind of contracts exist? Okay, there are cost reimbursable contracts. You can have cost plus. Example, cost plus a fee of 50,000. You tell somebody to buy this remote control for you. All right, I'm sure you can see the remote control. Tell somebody to buy this remote control for you. Let's say you sold at $10. All right, you say, you buy me this remote control, I'll pay you $2. That means they'll buy it, you pay them the $10, but their fee, their profit is $2. They're looking at the $2. They don't care what the cost is in the market. They might go to the market and don't find it for $10. It's now $20. It's not their business. They buy it at $20. They come back, you pay them $22 because you promised them $2. That is cost plus a fee. And the details include cost plus a percentage of cost plus fixed fee, cost plus incentive fee, cost plus award fee. These are all different variations of a cost reimbursable. Then you have a time and material, as you can see on the screen. You call it T&M, unit price. That's where you say this will cost you $25 per hour. Once you hear $5 an hour, $20 an hour, that is time and material. It doesn't matter how much it costs, you are charging your labor. Okay, it's generally used for smaller projects. The guy mowing your lawn, okay, you understand that your lawn might take him 2 hours to mow. You say, look, I'm going to pay you $10 an hour. That's $20 for the 2 hours he's there. He sits on his lawnmower, drives around the place, mows it for you, collects his money, and he walks out. It's $20 an hour. All right? And then you have a fixed price. A fixed price is a lump sum. It's up to the person doing the job to make their profit from that fixed price. When I was an architect a long time ago, I had fixed price contracts. You give me a contract for, say, $2 million. It's my business to go in there and try to get that job done for as low as a fee as I can. Because if I can do that, then the balance is my profit. So the lower the amount of money I'm spending on getting that contract done, the higher my profit is. But sometimes market forces can hit me and I come out at a loss. It is the fixed price is the most risky type of contract for sellers, okay? And it's the most less risk for buyers, and on and on. So there are a lot of negotiations going on here going forwards. All right. So that takes us to a few key terms here. Let's look at a few key terms. RFI means request for information. RFP, request for proposal. RFB, request for bids. RFQ, request for quote. PO means purchase order. SOW means statement of work. NDA means a non-disclosure agreement. LOI means a letter of intent. And TC means terms and conditions. Force majeure means an act of nature, an act of God. Doctrine of waiver means a statement that states rights under a contract cannot be waived unless the contract parties agree. Preview of contracts means a contractual relationship. Dispute resolution, documents or notes on how disputes will be resolved. These are all key procurement terms I'd like you to memorize. So again, if you're watching this video, stop here, look at this, take a screenshot, know them. Luckily, they're easy because all you have to do is just follow the alphabets, okay? RFI, request for information, on and on and on. Okay, so how do you select your source of procurement? What are the criteria you need to select how you buy things? Are you going to go on a least cost basis? You're looking for the cheapest possible thing? Are you looking for qualifications only? Like in the architectural world, you cannot quote for a government contract if you're not a registered architect. You can't. So it's qualifications based. So it's not just enough to get a degree, as you guys know. You also have to be registered with the relevant Architects Registration Board before you can go for government contracts. All right? Your selection could be quality-based. You have a high technical score. You have a good track record. People know that you're an expert in this field, and so that qualifies you. Some people are knocked off because they haven't done it before. They don't have that track record. Okay? It could be sole source. Sole source means you're the only person who can do this. I remember building a mausoleum for an old gentleman way back in Africa many, many years ago, 30, 35 years ago. And when we finished, we installed an electronic door 2 floors down in his mausoleum. Of course, the man outlived, we thought he was going to die in 3 years. He spent another 7 years. By the time he died, the batteries were gone. The batteries of the doors were gone. I had to send to my partners in Canada to ship me the batteries to get into his mausoleum that were built 8 years before. That's a sole source. The owners of the electronic doors were in Canada, and they were the only people who produced those doors. I had to send for them 7 years after in Canada to send me replacement batteries to be able to gain access to that mausoleum. And then, of course, you have fixed budget. When you have a fixed budget, you're only going to have people source for the job who are willing to work within your budget. And that's why most times you're going into a business proposition, guess what happens? People ask you, what's your budget? They need to know what your budget is to work within that time frame going forwards. All right. Key concepts before our questions and answers, okay? What are our key concepts? Procurement knowledge is needed to support decision-making related to contracts. You've got to have a slight knowledge of procurement before you can decide on contracts. Procurement relates to agreements and relationships between a buyer and a seller. The complexity of the agreement should match the complexity of the arrangement. There are many forms of agreements: contracts, service level agreements, understandings, memorandum of agreement, purchase orders. Other key concepts include agreements must comply with laws. Okay, the laws of a country, the laws of a state, laws differ in different countries, in different states. The agreements you have must be according to the laws of the state that you live in. And that's why when you see a contract, you say this contract is pursuant to the laws of the state of Georgia, or the state of Delaware, or the state of California. All depends on where your company is located. Procurements need to meet the project needs and align with each organization's policies. Agreements are legal agreements, so they often require multiple approvals. You can't make an agreement alone. All right, you need the highest level of authority in your organization to make that agreement legal. Projects may require multiple contracts with many relationships across the organization. All right, so these are key concepts. Let's get to our question and answer because we've got to go. All right. A request for proposal includes the available budget and asks bidders for their best proposal to do the work at that price. What source selection type is this? Is this a sole source? Is it a list cost? Is it a fixed budget? Is it a fixed price? Let's look at it again. A request for proposal includes the available budget and asks bidders for their best proposal to do the work at that price. The answer is C. The correct answer is C. Okay? It is a fixed budget selection. Fixed price is when the seller provides a price, not when the buyer provides a price. The fixed budget is the buyer is the person providing a price to do the work. Remember that. All right. The next question is: a project manager is in the middle of creating a request for proposal, RFP. What part of the procurement process is he in? Is he in conduct procurements, plan procurement, administer procurement, control procurements? Think about it. A project manager is in the middle of creating a request for proposal, creating, planning. So the answer there is a B, plan procurement management. This includes statements of work and requests for proposal. They are created during the plan procurement management processes. Okay, now it is time for me to share that early bird link. I did promise you that if you stay till the end, I'll be sharing the PMP certification early bird link for only $2,000. Here goes. This is just going to be here very, very briefly. Okay, the link there is at the top. As you can see, all right, the link is at the top, as you can see, and that is a 2,000 early bird full payment. That is a QR code, and that is the link for you to be here. Please, this expires on June the 15th. That is in exactly 2 weeks' time. Okay, so if you're watching this video, if you're sharing this video with your people, on midnight on June the 15th, okay, going into June the 16th, this link will not work anymore. Okay, you'll be forced to pay the $2,500. So please, please hurry, get it done. All right, I'm going to be closing with a PMP certification fast track information. These are payment informations. The first QR code there is the QR code for the description. So if you click on this QR code, you see the description of a PMP certification program. All right, the next QR code there talks about option number 1, the $2,500 one-time full payment. The third QR code is the option number 2, the $1,250 two-time payments at the beginning of the first month and the beginning of the third month. Okay, and the final QR code is the option 3, which is a 5-payment option, where the first QR code there is a $500 deposit, and the next QR code there is a $525 4-time payments. Please take a screenshot here. I'm going to stop here a little bit and allow you to sync this in, okay? Stop the video, look at it here, take your screenshots, go ahead and get it done. But if you're watching this video and it is still not June the 16th, please, please, please wait a moment, go and get that early bird pricing, because that early bird pricing saves you $500, okay? Now, the CAPM certification information comes up next. There are 4 QR codes there. The first QR code tells you is the description for the CAPM certification, okay? And of course, that is the link right there. The next QR code is the option 1, the $1,000 one-time full payment, and that is a link underneath there. The second option, option number 2, is the $500 two-time payments payable at the beginning of each month, the first month and the second month, and that is a link there. And the final QR code, option number 3, is the $250 4-time payments, and that is the link there. Again, stop here, take your screenshots. That is for the CAPM entry-level people who are trying to get into project management. This is cheaper, it's only $1,000. It takes you 10 weeks, and in 10 weeks, you're ready to take that exam. I assure you. Remember, the materials are coming directly from PMI. I am just the instructor. And once you take this course and finish it, I'm able to sign off that you've taken it, and that covers your 7,500 hours of verifiable project management experience. Once you take this course, and I sign off on it. All right? Okay, I'm going to share once more our early bird link. Okay, our early bird link. This is our last slide for the day. Again, on the left-hand side is your $200 early bird full payment link on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side is your $2,500 one-time full payment. If you're watching this after June 16th, after June 15th, you can only utilize the $2,500 one-time full payment on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side is before June 15th. Avail yourself of that opportunity. All right, guys. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the broadcast. I want to thank you all so much for working with me. All right. My name is Dr. KD Ewulu. I am the ATP and the ATI for the PMP and the CAPM certifications. I'm also the lead coach for KD Leadership. I'll be the one taking the class personally. Any of those classes personally, whether it's a 17-week, once per week video class, or the 10-week one for the CAPM, whatever it is, you're going to be seeing my mug, my face there. Okay, nobody else is going to take that class but me. Okay, we're going to have another masterclass. The last masterclass is going to come up on July 11th, in a month and a week. Again, on this platform, LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. We're going to be working on project stakeholder management, code of ethics and professional conduct. We're going to be talking about how to finalize your PMP exam documentations and how to get your registrations ready going forwards, okay? And of course, I'm going to be sharing all this information. I'm hoping that by that time, a lot of you have registered and we're ready to rock and roll, all right? Until then, this is Dr. KD. I'm going to be putting this back on the screen again for you. This is Dr. KD Ewulu signing off and thanking you for working with me at this very time for the PMP certification and the CAPM certification. Until then, cheers. Take care of yourselves and be safe out there. And I look forward to earnestly seeing you at the certification fast track training program.